In this video, I have my longest flight ever, as well as hitting my top speed of all time. But first, we got to get off the ground. But as we'll see in this next segment, that was not the easiest thing. In fact, this was one of the hardest launches of my entire hang gliding career.
Bro, my palms are sweaty right now. This is crazy. Yeah, it's super windy. At least 15, and I think that's outside my safe envelope. If I get a nice long lull, I'm gonna send it. But right now, if a gust hit, this would be absolutely crazy. It could flip me so easily, stall out, or something nuts.
So I had to wait for 16 minutes at the top of this launch ramp by myself, hoping the wind's not gonna blow me away. And yeah, my palms got a little bit sweaty. At any moment, a strong gust could have come up this ramp and easily flipped the glider over. That's why I'm focusing so hard on keeping the nose down of the glider, because I'd much rather have that nose crash into the ground than flipping me back on my back like a turtle.
Woo! That's lifted, bro.
So I finally make it off the ground, and I'm just commenting there how much lift I'm feeling. So as we saw, huge, massive cycles coming through, too strong, where I felt to a point I didn't even want to take off. And so my palms were getting so sweaty. I was so nervous, just like, don't want to turtle, freaking out the whole time. Actually had the nose crash into the ramp one time because I was holding it so far down, because every time that gust would come, I would just like feel the whole glider shaking. I got to keep my foot on the base tube, got to keep my body upright so I can really force the nose down. High effort. So I finally get into the air, and the air is so lifty. It's just amazing air. It's a little turbulent, not gonna lie, but I could just tell immediately like this could be a really good flight. I've seen birds that whole time I was waiting, hawks just holding position, perfectly ridge soaring with how strong these cycles were coming in. There was a little bit of prevailing winds for sure. And actually we'll see that with the speedometer. And that brings me to this next point. I've upgraded my data overlays a little bit. I spent more time than I'd like to admit, at least like 6 hours getting this figured out. I'm really close, maybe like another month, and I'm ready to upload the code. It's gonna be a little bit technical if you wanna use it, but I'll make a video explaining all that at another time.
Climbing for real. Holy crap, above launch. Oh my god. Wild.
So we can see my speedometer here on the far left in the middle of your screen. And so my top speed for this flight was 44. So that's what I set as the notional max for the speedometer. And then we'll have my current speed displayed in the middle there. And so we see as I'm flying in this direction along the ridge, I'm kind of going into the wind. And so and this is speed over ground on the speedometer. So my speed over ground is kind of slow actually, like 14, 15, 20 miles an hour. Totally acceptable like speed to fly at, even if I wasn't going straight into the wind, like I'd still be getting lift. But the thing we got to remember is my actual speed through the air is much faster than we're seeing on that speedometer, because I got a headwind coming straight into me. And so I'm actually flying through the air pretty fast, and we'll just see how fast that is when I make some turns here and start going downwind, because we'll see that speed get up to 44 miles an hour, speed over ground. My speed through the air is actually probably about the same. I'm just going with the flow of the wind. So here we go, making that turn, not quite fully downwind yet, and there's downwind. So yeah, we're getting up ground speeds 35 miles an hour plus. And so that's launch right there, man. I am so stoked. This is like the first time I've been like really above launch this early on a flight, and damn, 40 miles an hour ground speed. Awesome. And we just see the closing speed with that paraglider there. But yeah, that ramp there, that's where I just took off from. And this felt awesome because all the paragliders were waiting to launch this whole time, and I just see them all standing there. And it's just a great feeling being the one guy up in the air. Those paragliders are just watching. I'm like, man, I'm having the time of my life right now. And so yeah, we see that ground speed cut way back down as I make this turn back up into kind of the prevailing wind. And I'm still like, I can see myself moving, so I know it's not like I'm like, oh crap, I'm getting blown back, like I'm not gonna make the landing zone or anything like that. But I'm like, yeah, there's a really strong wind. I've never done like ridge soaring before, but I feel like I was basically doing ridge soaring in a way here. There's definitely some thermal lift coming up as well, but I mean, I'm for sure just like surfing on the wind that's blowing up this ridge here. So as we see just one other paraglider in the air. Didn't see any hang gliders for a while on this flight. Actually, don't think at all. We'll see though. So this whole time, like, I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. There's no one on the radio with me. I'm the only pilot that I have like comms with. Like, I don't have an instructor watching me on this one because I already got the sign off for the site. It's after 5 p.m. I'm on my own, really, even as a H2, and so I'm like not totally sure what the best play is, but I'm figuring it out. I'm living and learning. So in my head, I'm kind of like, okay, it'd be cool to make it to that farther like ridge there, kind of where that paraglider is ish right now. But also I'm getting like really good, like just mechanical lift from this ridge. And so maybe I just want to stay back there. Also hard to tell because as the sun's setting here, winds are shifting, thermals are dying down. It's kind of hard to tell where the best spot is going to be. And it's constantly changing, in relatively getting worse as far as a lift perspective as the sun goes down and the temperatures start dropping, winds calming down, thermals are getting smaller. So I got to take everything with a grain of salt because it's constantly changing. And so for this one, just kind of loop back, and if we had a ground track looking down, I basically do this a few times, and all three actually throw that up on the screen right now. So there is my path over the ground just from a satellite's view, and we can see, you know, I'm just in a lot of loops at the top here, and I was getting great lift. Like, so there's launch again, and I'm actually just about as high, and I get a little bit higher. And so it was so crazy. Like, I still can't, like, just looking back at this footage, it is so awesome being above launch and just like knowing that you've like actually gained that altitude. Like, it feels so cool. Like, you feel like you like really accomplished something just because you're harnessing the power of the wind and you're achieving lift. Like, it feels amazing. Just to like look at it, and then just like the feeling of getting sucked up by this air is so cool. So cool. And so if you're a more experienced pilot, feel free to hop in on the comment section below. I cannot tell if I should have been doing a circling maneuver, like at points, like this point coming up in a little bit where I get to my highest like absolute altitude. Like, maybe I should have been circling here. It really didn't feel like it was the play just because it felt like there was so much of like a headwind or prevailing wind, and I was doing more of a ridge soar than a thermal lift. But that being said, we can clearly see that there's places where I was getting a lot more lift than others and still penetrating through the wind. And so if you have some thoughts on this, just based on the limited information you have from what we're seeing on screen here, feel free to chime in. Like, so right here, I'm like shooting up. Like, should I have been circling there? I'm not totally sure. But I had my longest flight by a long shot, so even if I didn't do it perfect, I am so happy with this flight. So we can see that huge turn there. And this was a big critical decision point for me because I'm probably about, like, I know I'm going to be like about as high as I'm going to get over that point there unless I get some crazy lift far back on the range where I just was. And so I was like, should I go over this ridge and mess around down there? Like maybe it's got a little more direct sunlight. I see like another paraglider going that way. Maybe I should try to work up the ridge there. I'm not sure what the play is. And so if you're an Andy Jackson or Crestline or Marshall's flyer and had an opinion of what I should have done back there, would love to hear your thoughts because I was really unsure what to do. And so I'm coming around here, big, nice turn, and we see that ground speed kick right back up. So there's still a lot of prevailing wind. And that's kind of where I was like, hey, I'm just going to shoot back to where I've been getting lift. I'm already having a great flight. Like 10 minutes in, I'm checking the watch. I'm like, man, this is like easily going to be one of my longest flights if I can do this just for a little bit longer. And I ended up doing even better than that. But even at this point, I knew like if I just like did what I just did, even if it dies down a little bit with the sun and the winds, I'm still going to have a crazy long flight. And so I didn't want to risk it going into an area I've never been. And I don't know exactly what it's like when I just had this great lift in this section back here. And so that's kind of where I turned back. I'm like, hey, I'm just going to keep on messing around with that. It's been working out. I'm just going to stick with it. And so one new overlay I'm adding into this video, as well as my speedometer and making my altitude plot a little bit wider, is in the very bottom left. You've probably noticed by now, I have my total flight time in the bottom left since takeoff. I did that for a few reasons. I would imagine, hopefully in future videos where I'm getting like multiple hour flights, I'm probably not going to upload the whole flight. Let me know if you think you would like to see the whole flight. Maybe I'll do some fast forwarding so there's not like skip segments, but I'm imagining I'm not going to be wanting to put up like a 3-hour video if I get a 3-hour flight. Maybe I'm being like super overconfident in where my abilities will end up. I'm not sure. But especially for this flight, I flew so long and I started the GoPro so early because of that long time on the launch point. I didn't end up with video for everything. And so I have to fast forward just through. I have my data overlay from my recorder app, but no video. And so that's where the time will help just to kind of get an idea, because I'll talk through that last little fast forwarded section near the end of this video. And again, love seeing the launch there. And so that's just a good reference, even though I'm not putting our satellite track on the whole time. Every time we see that ramp, I'm back at launch and I'm mostly above it. Actually, at this point, I'm a little bit below. But compared to like my first flight that I did off this launch site, like normally I'd be already below this section. And so the fact that I'm like kind of about where I would be from a normal takeoff, already 12, 13 minutes into my flight, amazing feeling. Like I know that like this flight is working out. I'm doing something right, or at least getting lucky with the conditions. Maybe I'm totally blowing it. Maybe I could have been thousands of higher. But I think with the way the conditions were working today is I couldn't have gotten like super, super high above this. And tell me if I'm wrong, if you know better than me, but this is my guess, is because it was a lot of mechanical lift there. I think I would have gotten outside of the lift band if I like somehow got higher, and it would have slowed down, and I kind of would have been like stuck around this like lift band altitude. But maybe I totally misread it and there's just some massive gigathermal that I could have been riding all the way to like 10,000 feet or something. I'm not totally sure. So back in this section, I'm kind of trying to find that huge lift pocket I got when I got to my highest point for the flight, you know, about 5 minutes ago, where I had that really high point we can see on the chart there. I'm just trying to figure out where exactly that really good band was. Again, I could have maybe tried to turn in it, but there was just so much headwind. I wasn't sure if that was the play. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be turning when there's like that much of a headwind to stay in the thermal. I just don't know if it would actually work out as far as staying in the right position in the thermal. And again, I could be wrong. So if you're a more experienced pilot, please chime in. Let me know your thoughts on that. And so there we see I kind of do get back in that pocket of that thermal, get some good lift there. And maybe I should be turning like right here as I'm like kind of getting to the top, and then I'm back in some sinking air here. But I'm not really sure, honestly. And yeah, so turning back there, I mean, I've definitely overshot, as we can see from the graph, and gotten a lot of sink. But that's kind of why I'm starting to turn back sooner on a couple of these turns, is I'm like, okay, like I feel like there's like a good lifting point back here, and I just want to stay close to that. Again, looking back on it, and let me know what you think, maybe I should have been circling in it. I'm not sure. Love seeing the shadow on the ridge there a little bit. We really see how much of an angle the sun is at. So we're about 6 p.m. I think for this launch. Well, 6 p.m. right now. Launched maybe like 5:45, 5:30. I can put that up on the screen. And I wanted to launch right at 5. You know, I took the shuttle up. I was like, all right, I'm going to launch right at 5. Get up there. It is blowing strong, dude. Like we saw, it was really coming in. I didn't feel comfortable launching, and so I was just waiting out. We see that windsock fully extended at launch. And I just didn't want to screw the launch up and, you know, injure myself, damage the glider, and have a bad day. So I just waited it out. I'm actually not sure if it got lighter or not. I mean, I just waited for like a nice long lull period and sent it off. So cool, dude. This is absolutely amazing. I feel like I'm at bird. My left shoulder is getting kind of sore. I'm feeling like I'm actually getting something figured out though as far as lift, and it's pretty awesome. I don't feel like there's a ton of great stuff in front of me there. But I'm getting such a nice strong lift right in front of launch. I really like circling back and just keeping getting that pocket. Probably some way to get a figure 8 there, but I haven't figured it out. My feet are kind of falling asleep a little bit. Gotta figure out some better way to rig up this harness, but man, it is so worth it. This is absolutely amazing.
come down, dude. I just want to stay up forever.
So, spoiler alert, my next flight is not as long as this one. It was just a little sled ride, and so I'll be uploading that full video. But if you're sticking around at this point, let me know in the comment sections below, what do you prefer? Do you like to just see this like 1x playtime when I'm not talking and just me kind of cruising around working it out? Or would you prefer if I fast forwarded through these sections? I'll still include them so we can see the whole flight, but I could, you know, be playing this at 2, 3, 4 times the speed. And that way you still get my insights, you still see the whole flight. But I mean, I would assume unless you're like at like a bar or something and it's just playing in the background, it's maybe not the most interesting just hanging around for, you know, 20, 30 minutes just watching me fly. But maybe I'm totally wrong. I mean, I've experienced it in person, and obviously it's much more fun in person than watching it. Not saying watching it's not fun, but I don't know. Are people interested in seeing this 1x play speed without me giving any insights for these longer flights where we're talking, you know, 30 plus minutes of a flight? Let me know. I'm totally fine keeping the video longer, as long as there's like good retention and people are actually interested. Because what I don't want to end up doing is having this super long video and I have like, you know, every like 10 minutes I'm saying something insightful that I really like wanted people to hear, but then people are just clicking away from the video because they're like, hey, this dude's not talking, like he's just flying around, like I gotta wait 10 minutes, I don't even know when he's gonna talk next. Like, I don't want to end up in that situation. And so if you think I should fast forward these sections where I'm not talking on these longer flights, please let me know. May try it out if I get a really long flight in the future. Again, my next flight was really short, so kind of a hypothetical right now, but we'll see what happens. And if I don't have full GoPro footage for the whole flight, then maybe that won't even be an option either. So we'll just see moving forward what happens. Boom. So still seeing some really turbulent air. This wasn't like a smooth flight by any means. I'd much rather have the lift than a smooth flight if it means I get to fly longer. And just something I was thinking about on the drive home, and especially at this point in the flight, 20 minutes in, like my shoulders are getting a little sore. Maybe I could have a little bit better adjustment with the harness. I'm actually not totally sure. My hair kind of tingling a little bit. I could have a better adjustment for the harness for those for sure. Shoulders, I don't know, maybe it's just a stamina thing. But despite all of that, my lips are getting chapped, the air's dry. It was over 100 degrees on the ground for this launch. Despite all of that, I'm like, at this point, I'm like looking down at the watch for like 20 minutes. I'm like, dude, if this could go for another hour, I would be so stoked. It's kind of like you just get into this, like, I don't know if it's really a flow state, but it, like, I'm flowing with the wind, if that makes sense. And I'm just at this point where I'm like, man, I am loving this, like, and this was the whole flight, but I'm just like, I'm loving this, like, I just want to keep on flying forever. Like, it's just such a nice, rewarding feeling, getting a little bit of lift, making those turns, being able to decide where I'm gonna go. Like, it feels so cool, and I'm so excited to get longer flights with like actual more vertical elevation gains, because while I stayed aloft a long time in this flight, I didn't get a ton of like high above the ground vertical. So in like moving a huge distance in new territory. So really excited for flights like that. Just after getting this experience here, knowing what this feels like, I am like even more hooked than ever on hang gliding. Like, this flight really like opened my eyes of like, okay, this sport is like seriously worth pursuing and getting good at, because getting another flight like this one, like, it's like a powder day, like skiing, getting first tracks like the whole time. Like, it's that type of a feeling. It feels that good. Or having like a nice like long wave like in the direction of your like foot preference, and you don't have to worry about anyone else in the lineup. Like, that's how this one felt. And especially commenting on that lineup and first tracks aspect, I wasn't contending with a lot of pilots until the end of this flight. And actually I didn't even get that one on video because it was so long. But just having the air and the space to myself, it was awesome. Of course, it'd be fun to be on the radio with the boys, but this was so cool, just kind of being out here by myself, having the freedom to make these decisions and do whatever I wanted. And so about at this point, and we can see from that big valley in my altitude chart, I'm about to start heading down the ridge I was getting not a lot of lift here, but it's not like I was getting crazy sync. This is just me deciding to head down the ridge. I'm not like pulling in like crazy or anything either, but I'm just not going to be getting that same lift as I'm moving through these shaded valley areas. And so I just kind of wanted to explain that if you're unfamiliar with the altitude plot or generally how like lift in the mountains works. So giving the little hands a little rest right there, chilling out. Looking down at the watch. Again, like I'm getting sore for sure. It's been a long flight, but again, loving every moment of it. Like totally worth the price to pay. I mean, looking back, like I remember being sore, but I don't feel that pain anymore. What I do remember though is like the joy of being in the air and experiencing this experience. Priceless, man. Priceless. So cruising down here, I'm hopeful that I'm gonna get a little pocket of lift, but again, with the shadow showing up on these ridges already, I don't think there's like a strong chance of a thermal, but I'm keeping my eyes open, you know, I'm ready. If I feel some lift, maybe I'll risk a turn. I still got plenty of altitude to mess around with. Not crazy amounts, but enough to make a turn if I feel like a really strong cycle, but didn't really get that until later. And we can actually see I got my like longest sections of just straight lift very late in this flight, and so I was kind of maintaining altitude for a lot of this flight, which was awesome. But I like really got some like good elevation gains in the later half of this flight. And again, just I'm aware of the time. Like I'm looking at my watch, I can feel like I'm already within a couple minutes of my longest flight ever right now, and I'm just so stoked. So at this point, I'm looking at the landing zone. I'm like, okay, I still got a good amount of altitude. Let's see what we can do here. I see a paraglider getting some lift, which gives me really good hope that I'll be able to find some lift. Again, at this point, I'm like almost 30 minutes. Like, I know this could be my longest flight ever if I just cut out right here and land, which feels awesome. And what happens next really surprised me because I didn't expect to get this long of a flight at this point. And again, I'm just watching this paraglider being like, okay, what are they doing? Where are they getting lift? I'm feeling myself starting to get lift, which I'm really excited about. Again, looking at that watch, and this is the point, like in my head, I just keep on looping. I'm like, all right, dude, another 5 minutes, like another 10 minutes. Like, let's just keep on pushing this. I really want to hit 40 minutes at first in my head. Then I'm like, okay, I really want to hit 45 minutes. And I'm like, okay, I really want to hit 50 minutes. And at that point, I was like, oh, can I push it to an hour? It just didn't end up happening. But I was so stoked to make it over 40 minutes on this flight, like mind-blowingly stoked. So the other thing is here, we see that pool down there. This was one of the pool party days at Andy Jackson, and so I'm kind of like, oh, do I want to land to get some barbecue? Like, I don't know, but I'm like, nah, I'm gonna stay up. Maybe I'll even get to fly over the pool a few times, like let them know what's up. I got a couple of friends down there. They know what my glider looks like. They'll see me. They'll be stoked. And so I'm just like so hyped that I'm like able to see the action at the pool. I'm getting lift. I'm having my longest flight ever. There's another guy up here getting lifts with me. Like, great feeling, great feeling. So here, I'm getting great lift, and I'm really stoked on that. I look at the watch there, I'm like, damn, I'm back above 3,000 feet? Like, what? That's crazy. Like, let's go. So my side GoPro just cut out there, and so I'll be switching to just the tail for these last couple minutes. And then again, like I said before, I did not get the full video of this flight, and so I'm just going to be talking to you about the last little segment and what was going through my head, and we'll have the data overlay, which is great, and that's why I spent so much time working to get this speedometer working, because I think that really adds a lot of value. So let me know in the comment section below what your thoughts are on that as well.
My lips got so dry, it was crazy. Definitely wish I had the Camelback hooked up, routed to like shoulder or something would be super ideal. Dude, it was crazy. I feel like I was doing a marathon. And the sweat was crazy, man. Like, I had to keep a little hole zipped just to get airflow. Like, I was in shorts and the long sleeve, and I was literally sweating the whole time in the harness. Super crazy feeling, but glad it didn't go pants. Gosh dang. The flight was so epic, man. I just feel like I'm still in a trance. Like, I just want to be back up there. It's so cool. It's just like so addicting. Like you just feel like you really want to stay in the air forever, man. Like I just want to be back up there. It's so fun and relaxing. Even if my feet were getting a little sore, my shoulders were getting a little sore, like it is so cool just being flying around, man. Awesome.
So I saw those people setting up down there that whole time. I was like, what? Like, are they gonna launch? Like, what's going on? I'm not totally sure. I think the guy ended up did flying down eventually, and maybe I just missed it and didn't even see it. But I was like, all right, like, if he takes off and gets some crazy lift like me, I'm gonna have to contend with him, but ended up not happening. And so, as we can see now, GoPro's cut out. I didn't know in flight if that had happened or not, but luckily I still have the data overlay. And so it's kind of fast forwarding through it right now because I don't think you want to see one by one time of just me talking over what ends up being about another 15 minutes of flight time.
And so what we're looking at now is Google Earth fly-through using the GPX data from my phone recording app to visualize the flight.
Didn't get a lot of lift here. In fact, I was battling around, dropped down pretty low, in fact, but as we'll see in a little bit, as I'm losing altitude, coming down, and then eventually I get a nice little boost back up, and I'm able to maintain for a little bit more. At that point, I'm over 50 minutes, and I'm just kind of like, okay, like, I'm getting pretty low, like maybe I could squeak out like 1 or 2 more turns here, and I get a little bit going. And I'm like, okay, you know what? It's time to call it. I'm going to head in. And so coming in for this landing, you know, I'm like, oh man, like, am I going to, do I have like the gravity syndrome from like being in space so long? Like, are my legs going to work? Like, I'm like, okay, like practicing zipping the zipper a couple times, like making sure I'm ready to get out. I did a walk by of the landing aid. I saw that was a little bit overgrown, and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be using that for this landing because it's so overgrown. And so I come in for landing. There was a little bit of like a headwind, a little bit of lift actually, and I was like, oh man, I'm going to overshoot. And I start going to the side. Terrible move. Should have just like stayed down the middle of the field. Ended up correcting, being totally fine. Super solid landing. Didn't even have to run it out. Had a great flare, but I made this like one big turn like right before I landed. Not to play. Glad I was able to recognize that. Don't want to do that again. But yeah. Thank you so much for watching. If you're a more experienced pilot, love any comments, any feedback, anything. Even if you're not an experienced pilot, also love the comments. But especially if you're an experienced pilot, like I think there's things I could have for sure done better on this flight, and I would love to hear your thoughts on that. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll hope to see you in the next one.
My landing was a little wonky. I came in kind of wobbly. And then like turned like weird on the last second. I don't know what, I thought I was gonna like way overshoot, but I was totally fine. Flare was great, really stoked on the flare. I had a nice like full stop and then came down a few feet. It was nice, but I did a crazy ass little turn at the end. That was not smart, but it worked out and it was a nice landing, honestly.